quick. This video is going to be pretty quick. I just want to highlight just a really interesting fact that doesn't get talked about nearly as much as it should. And it's that in 2002, NATO and Russia got together in Rome, of all places, to join for a joint NATO-Russia summit to quote unquote. It was essentially a crusade that was launched together, NATO with Russia, against the war on terrorism, and that they need to come together in an alliance to quell quote civil emergencies and civil unrest. And there's essentially like Russia and NATO coming together to create like a worldwide martial law police state. And I'm making this video because I was just watching the documentary I have on my channel, The Assassination of Russia. From that documentary was made in 2002, but that documentary was about the 1999 apartment bombings, which allowed Vladimir Putin, a former KGB agent, to ascend to power. Vladimir Putin, to this day, is very, very close with the Vatican. Like, I have a story from the Kremlin archived up on my blog here. Putin met with Vatican Secretary of State Petro Parolin at his Sochi residence, August 23rd, 2017. This is the Secretary of State, Vatican Cardinal Petro Parolin, went to the Bilderberg Conference last 2017 as well. The Bilderberg Conference, though, was founded by a Jesuit, Joseph Rettinger. The point being, Putin is very close to the Pope. Like, if you read the quotes in this article, you'll see that the Russia and the Vatican, aka the Holy See, Vatican, is very close with Russia. But I recommend you watch the documentary "The Assassination of Russia" on my channel, because the only two terrorists that were actually implicated, like that were caught in the act or caught with like planting bombs, had hexogen in them, and only intelligence agencies and militaries can get access to hexogen. But the only two guys that were actually found to have planted the bombs were FSB agents, and that documentary goes into how the FSB, working under the guidance of the Jesuits, covered up those 1999 apartment bombings, and it's basically like they pulled off a 9/11 before they did it in the United States. They blamed the apartment bombings on the Chechen Muslims, and then they launched the two wars in Chechnya, just like how the U.S. blamed 9/11 on Iraq and Afghanistan, and they launched the war in Iraq, war in Afghanistan. But you see this NATO council, you see the NATO-Russia Council. This was to launch like a joint crusade against the war on terror together and build a worldwide police state. Here's some photos of it. And this was in Rome. You see, you see the Rome summit. This is a year after 9/11. This is the year the Jesuits created their Department of Homeland Security, more known as the Department of Homeland Security. The USA Patriot Act was drafted by Professor Veit Din in the United States. And interesting, just before I go into this, just in 2005, let me see here, the Roman Catholic Felix Dzerzhinsky, I sent this in an email. Moscow police. Okay, here it is. Yeah, so this is in 2005. But in 2005, the Moscow Police Department put a statue of the Roman Catholic Felix Dzerzhinsky, who is the infamous head of the Soviet Cheka secret police. The Soviet Cheka police. This guy, Dzerzhinsky, had like just on his orders, probably you're looking at like hundreds of thousands, sent to the gulags. Like, the Soviets were infamous. The Cheka secret police is just as not infamous as the Nazi SS secret. The SS secret police was also modeled on the Jesuit order, like the Cheka police was. Heinrich Himmler. This was admitted by G. Gordon Liddy and Walter Schellenberg. Heinrich Himmler was a devout Catholic like Felix Dzerzhinsky. But here's the source here, just on like a history learning site. Dzerzhinsky, the head of the Soviet Cheka police, while at school, brought up as a Roman Catholic, said his first career choice while at school was to be a Jesuit priest. We see here Moscow police here on November 8th. I translated this article from a Russian lenta.ru. On November 8th, 2 days before Militia Day, Felix Dzerzhinsky returned to the courtyard of the Moscow Police Department. The implications of this, is very, very dark. Very, very dark. If you know the history of the terrorization of the Soviet Cheka police under devout Roman Catholic, and Felix Dzerzhinsky wasn't even Russian; he was from Catholic Poland, and you see he aspired to be a Jesuit priest. But you see here, Dzerzhinsky returned to the courtyard of the Moscow Police Department, and this is after Rome and NATO had their joint summit meeting at the Vatican. NATO and Russia at the Vatican in 2002 to launch a global crusade against terrorism. And they literally, I'm going to show you the exact language they use. They use the term civil emergencies. We need to be on guard for civil emergencies and civil unrest. We see Felix Dzerzhinsky return to the courtyard of the Moscow Police Department building at Petrovka, 38 days old. He returned not personally and not entirely, but in the form of a bust. Who made the decision to restore the monument and why, for what reasons, it was not known. The leadership of the Central Internal Affairs Directorate refused to comment at first. Perhaps this is partly why the event, which news agencies learned from surprise employees of the Moscow Criminal Investigation Department, caused a lively discussion in the media and in society as a whole. Meanwhile, a rather banal event, which is largely an internal affair of the Central Affairs Directorate, provoked angry comments from representatives of several Democratic parties who regarded the transfer of the bust of Dzerzhinsky from the museum storerooms to the courtyard in one of the Capitol buildings as a sign of the country's return to authoritarianism. It sure is a sign of the country's return to authoritarianism. Like Putin's he's going to be in office for 24 years when the next elections come around. It's going to actually turn into a situation like Jesuit-trained Paul Biya, the current, quote, Democratic leader of Cameroon, who has been elected, Biya has been in office for 40 years. And he's Jesuit trained at the Lycée Le Grand in Paris, France, the dictator of Cameroon, who interestingly is actually, the media is, predictably not talking about this. Paul Biya is initiating kind of a mini genocide within the country of Cameroon against the English-speaking population. But and that's Jesuit-trained Paul. To the article here, the head of the Republican Party and State Duma, Deputy Vladimir Ryshkov, said Dzerzhinsky is the personification of concentration camps and, quote, bloody atrocities. And this is the devout Roman Catholic Felix Dzerzhinsky who wanted to be a Jesuit priest. I'm going to show you a picture of his statue, his bust at the Moscow Police Department. You see here, so Vladimir Ryshkov, who called Catholic Dzerzhinsky the personification of concentration camps and bloody atrocities in the long history of the Soviet country, spoke most radically. He said that human rights activists and politicians should demand that the head of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Rashid Nurgaliyev, remove the bust of Catholic Dzerzhinsky from the territory of the Central Internal Affairs Directorate. And the Jesuits, were in the background, probably putting up the statue. But here's the article here. You can translate it. I'll link the article in Russian. You can translate it with Google Translate. But here's the art: cold head and warm heart. For some reason, the police returned the bust of Dzerzhinsky. For some reason, we know the reason though, because the Jesuits are in control of Russia. And actually, all you got to do here is after this NATO summit, the same symbolism. If you watch the interview I did with Clinton, the video I showed in the national emergency, and if you watch that, I did a whole video on the fascist symbolism. The Roman fascist symbolism is all over the United States. But recently, after Putin took office with his own 9/11 event, which was his 1999 apartment bombings, the Federal Bailiff Service of Russia changed their logo in 2004 to incorporate the Roman fasces. Would you look at that? And you see the double-headed eagle here. You see the Roman fascist is now on the Federal Bailiff Service of Russia and the Federal Prison Service. Or federal, they call it the Federal Penitentiary Service. And you see here the Roman fascists again. So but I'm just going to read to you the excerpts from this NATO symbol, NATO Russia Rome summit meeting on the civil emergencies. You see, civil emergencies will pursue enhanced mechanisms for future NATO Russia cooperation. Oh, look at that. civil emergencies, pursue enhanced mechanisms for future NATO-Russia cooperation in responding to civil emergencies. Initial steps will include the exchange of information on recent disasters and the exchange of WMD consequence management information. It's actually interesting. I'll show you I'll link this Washington Post article too, because in 2008, the Pentagon used the excuse of we need to be on guard for a WMD going off in the homeland, for deploying a whole bunch of troops domestically. Yeah, this article from the Washington Post was called "Pentagon to Detail Troops to Bolster Domestic Security," and this was in 2008. I just want to read the quote. They actually reference a WMD here, so you can see like the NATO, this NATO council is being put to practice. This is just 6 years later. Before the terrorist attacks, September 11th, dedicating to 20,000 troops to domestic response, a nearly sevenfold increase in 5 years, quote, would have been extraordinary to the point of unbelievable, said Paul McHale, Assistant Defense Secretary of Homeland Defense. I believe this guy went to Georgetown. Let me verify that. Yeah, Georgetown University. Jesuit trained Paul McHale said this. So obviously you couldn't have 20,000 troops inside the United States domestically as an occupying force without their staged 9/11 event beforehand. That's what he's admitting right there. Jesuit trained Paul McHale. Okay, so but the realization the civilian authorities may be overwhelmed in a catastrophe prompted a quote fundamental change in military culture. Jesuit trained Paul McHale said. See, the Pentagon calls for 3 rapid reaction forces to be ready for emergency response by September 11th. The first 4,700 person unit built around the active duty combat brigade based at Fort Stewart, Georgia, was available as of October 1st. Okay, I just want to, where's the, okay, here. Military preparations for a domestic weapon of mass destruction attack. So they're using this bullshit excuse of WMD going off. Like there's no WMDs in Iraq. Like they even admitted that in an official report that there was no WMDs. Like, oh yeah, they just kindly admitted, oh yeah, there was none. And interestingly, in Iraq, it was Jesuit trained at Baghdad College, Ahmed Chalawi, who was known as the George Washington of Iraq, who was spoon feeding the CIA all this bogus quote intelligence that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. But you see here, the Pentagon is using this excuse that of a domestic WMD going off. Okay, but just going back to the NATO Council, so just they're warning for emergency with recent disasters in the exchange of a WMD consequence management information. Okay, but here on page 7, the NATO-Russia Council, replacing the NATO-Russia Permanent Joint Council, will focus on all areas of mutual interest identified in Section 3 of the Founding Act, including the provision to add other areas by mutual agreement. The work programs for 2002 agreed in 2001 for the PJC, that's the Permanent Joint Council, and its subordinate bodies will continue to be implemented under the auspices and rules of the NATO-Russia Council. NATO member states and Russia will continue to intensify their cooperation in areas including the struggle against terrorism, crisis management. So all these words are basically buzzwords for ushering in martial law. And you should watch the Pentagon video I have on my channel. It's kind of like a dystopian classic with like the music in the background. It's kind of like no 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 no. So at the end of the video, the Pentagon actually references Jesuit Sun Tzu as their military strategist. Sun Tzu is some fictional Chinese military general from like 6000 BC, who in the first book of Sun Tzu's that came into a Western language was translated by a Jesuit. It must just be a coincidence, though. Sun Tzu's The Art of War, which is basically like a blueprint, for the Jesuit plan for world domination. It was a French Jesuit who translated that in. I'll get the name of that. Was it Jean Marie Amelot S.J. Sun Tzu. I'm probably botching it. I just want to get this right here. Okay, Jean Joseph Marriott Amiot. This was the Jesuit who was the first guy. He was the author of the book of Sun Tzu's, supposedly Sun Tzu's, to be first translated into a Western language. Okay, so we see here, but NATO and Russia are on guard for the struggle against terrorism, crisis management, non-proliferation, arms control. That's gun confiscation, from the citizens, not the police, though. The Jesuit Department of Homeland Security has given over $34 billion to local police departments in grant money for them to get brand new military equipment. So arms controls, confidence building measures, theater, missile defense, search and rescue at sea, military to military cooperation. Actually, this has already happened. Like, there's a bunch of foreign military troops I know already training on United States soil or American soil. I saw I saw footage, just the channel that had this up. I saw footage of Albanian soldiers on U.S. soil recently, for instance. And look at the next word they use: civil emergencies. That's martial law. They can declare a civil emergency and suspended, and now the military is in full control. This cooperation may complement cooperation in other fora. As initial steps in this regard, we have today agreed to pursue the following cooperative efforts. You see here: struggle against terrorism, crisis management. I'm just going to read the civil emergency section here. Actually, I already read that one. I'm going to go down to, I read this before this section here. So just continuing to go down on the report. This is page 10 now. In the NATO-Russia Council, NATO member states and Russia will work as equal partners in areas of common interest. Building on the Founding Act and its wide range of cooperation, the NATO-Russia Council will intensify efforts in the struggle against terrorism, crisis management, non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, arms control, and confidence-building measures. Theater, missile defense, search and sea. This is kind of the same statement here: search, rescue at sea, military to military cooperation, and defense reform. Well, that's a new term they use here: defense reform. More money going to the police and military, and gun confiscation. And here's civil emergencies. As we are united to resolve to overcome the threats and challenges of our time. We're continuing here. So we're a new council. We are well aware that our main goal, this is page 15, is to defend and safeguard the, quote, security of our peoples. Peoples. You see that? Peoples. That's a strictly legal term. Actually, people. This is why Jesuit trained Justin Trudeau always says people kind, not mankind. Justin Trudeau is a clown. See, people is the mass of illiterate persons. See, and persons are defined as fictional, artificial beings as well. Look at this. The commonality as distinct from men of rank. Look at that. The body of persons who compose a community, town, or city of nation. We say the people of a town, the people of London or Paris, the English, the people, the English people. In this sense, the word is not used in the plural. It comprehends all classes and inhabitants considered as a collective body. You see here a collective body, a collection or community of animals. And this is what the peoples is defined as in the law, and this is why the popes always use peoples in all of their encyclicals as well. It's the same reason. We see here, so we are aware that our main goal is to defend and safeguard the security of our peoples. We must confront the new worldwide emergency. So I repeat, we must confront the new worldwide emergency. And this is said at the NATO-Russia summit in Rome. The new folly of international terrorism. We must continue the increase in the production. We must counter the increase in the production of weapons of mass destruction. We must combat criminal organizations, drug and human trafficking. They're not doing a very good job at all. They really were going hard on Jeffrey Epstein, right? When they gave him that softball 13-month deal. And then it was really there was really justice served when they allowed he died on suicide watch, and then he wasn't able to testify. and now and the media has completely covered up, like absolutely zero talk about the Black Book connections to Jeffrey Epstein and all the powerful Vatican Jesuitical elite in the Black Book. The Black Book is a reference itself to the Black International Jesuit Order, Black Papacy, for instance. And and all the numerous like Vatican sex abuse, just all sex abuse cases in general. Like more and more of them are coming out. So this is just like a mockery here. But they say they're fighting against drug and human trafficking also. We must address regional crises, prevent and contain them through peace enforcing. Peace enforcing. Pope Leo XIII said force is the best means to preserve public tranquility and order. That came from his 1890 encyclical Septime Christianae. In peacekeeping operations, we must intervene in the so-called civil emergencies. I repeat, we must intervene in the so-called civil emergencies. Would you look at that? And then this, if you watch the Pentagon video I had from this, predicting the 2030 martial law, in a situation like that, you'd actually have NATO soldiers, in the streets, like enforcing the martial law. They would have foreign troops come in, presumably like with a NATO force or NATO force or a United Nations force. Okay. And you see here, page 24. I believe, this is the last part here. I just want to read from this. The new security environment emerging as the Euro-Atlantic in the Euro-Atlantic region requires more intense cooperation with the Russian Federation. You see, that's why the Russian Federation has the Roman fascists now on the Russian Federal Penitentiary Service and the Russian Federal Bailiff Service. That's the reason. And actually, and I have this up here. Jesuit trained Mark Weinberger at Georgetown. He was the CEO of Ernst & Young from 2013 to 2019, one of the world's biggest accounting firms, an American accounting firm. The Jesuit trained Mark Weinberger was in the Skull and Bones George W. Bush administration, and he was an advisor for Jesuit trained Bill Clinton as well. But I have Mark Weinberger's biography up here, but if you look, Mark Weinberger is very involved with Russia. Oh, where was that? Okay, right here. So Jesuit trained Mark Weinberger, former CEO of Ernst & Young. See, Mark plays an active role in the World Economic Forum, serving as a member of its International Business Council and as a global agenda steward for economic progress. He co-chaired the Russia Foreign Investment Advisory Council, the FIAC, with Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev. And actually, Dmitry Medvedev, when he was president of Russia, like Putin had to briefly become prime minister to get around like the constitutional rule where you can't basically be a ruler for life, but Putin is going to get around that. But you met Medvedev when he was president in 2008, was when Russia and the Vatican got into official legal diplomatic relations. So now there's a Vatican nuncio stationed at Russia, and Russia sends an ambassador to the Vatican. Here, but Jesuit trained Mark Weinberger he co-chairs the Russia Foreign Investment Advisory Council with Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev and serves as the chairman of the international. This is the mayor of Shanghai here. Okay, so you see here, NATO's external adaptation, the European Union's enlargement, and emergence as a new security player, risk and threats in the wake of September 11th, 2001, terrorism in the Eurasia region, extremist movements, the danger of the proliferation and use of weapons of mass destruction. All these compel us to act together to defend the use of our peoples and as well as our common civilization. Okay, but that's what I recommend you read the whole document. But you see here with the term civil emergencies, like they're prepping for a worldwide martial law type situation. Need be, like they're like the system enjoys the current status quo because the guys those on top are breaking it in. But if they need to declare a national emergency or a worldwide emergency, NATO and Russia are working on it together. And all this came in the aftermath of both the Jesuit co-opted provocateur events, like terrorist events, 9/11 in 2001, the September 11th attacks, and the 1999 apartment bombing attacks in Russia. But yeah, I think that's all for this one, YouTube. And again, it's not a coincidence that this council took place in Rome. Not a coincidence at all. I'm just gonna check the chat here. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, actually, just I believe Johnny, like, yeah, from when he emailed me, he said that there was like a hacker that got into it, but he sent out an email this morning saying that he and Greg, the graphic designer, and Greg's very tech savvy. Apparently, from what I read with the email, Johnny's website should be back online now. Oh, hey, Mark, how's it going? Hope all is well. And actually, interestingly, with Hong Kong, I'm reading your comment. Just Donald Trump came out and said he's going to remain silent about the Hong Kong protests because ultimately, Jesuit chain Donald Trump is working with the Jesuits to prop up China as a world power. Flooding U.S. refugees. Absolutely, yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, there's tons this isn't like this is just a reality. Like, even I see at Brock, like the Chinese government has so brainwashed their citizens so effectively that when they send Chinese people abroad, they're basically sending people with Communist Party talking points, and it's a way to push Chinese Communist Party propaganda, abroad. But essentially, it's the way the with Jesuit missionaries, how they would do it, and still do it today. All Catholic missionaries. Willow, honestly, I hope I sent Willow an email recently, actually, asking how he's doing. I see. I believe it's been 5 months dated a video, so I hope he's doing well. I hope nothing. Hope you don't want to presume the worst. He's probably just taking a break, doing his own thing. But I hope he's doing well. And I sent him an email. I'd love to have him on the show. He does great work, and if he's watching, I'd love to set that up. Freedom of democracy. I know I'm not aware of that. I'll have to check that out, Eric. Thanks for bringing that up. Mark Rubio, Chris Smith. I'll have to look into that. Mark Rubio is a devout Catholic, and he's on board with all of the police state measures that come through the Congress, and vocal of the Patriot Act, for instance. But yeah, I'll check out that Hong Kong bill. Yeah, I just wanted to do this a quick video here, just to NATO, Russia. I presume most people are unaware this even took place. Significance of the date, this took place a year after 9/11, the same year the Jesuits created the Department of Homeland Security. Just 3 years after Vladimir Putin and the Jesuit-controlled FSB initiated the false flag attacks with the apartment bombings, and many people. The tragic thing about this is, innocent people are the ones, or innocent, folks are the ones that are caught up in the crosshairs. I believe this was, I think it was 500 people killed in those Russia apartment bombings, and the 3,000 and the 9/11. But these, the puppet master behind the scenes. But yeah, I think that's all for this one, YouTube. Peace and love. Namnas. All roads lead to Rome. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace and love.